Good morning, ladies. Shavua Tov Mevorach. Today, the 12th day of Shevat, the 10th day of February 2025. Today's class dedicated for the Refuah Shelema of Shelomo ben Rosa, the young child Abraham Ilan Rafael ben Elisheva Ilanit. One second, Gamliel ben Haya, I believe. Chaim Alier ben Shiraz, may all of the Cholim have a refuah shelema. May all the hostages return safely to their home. And may all the Hayalim be protected among all of Am Israel. This coming Wednesday night will be the magnificent celebration of Tu Bishvat that Be'ezat Hashem, hopefully we'll discuss a bit towards the end of the class, time allowing. Otherwise, take this statement as a personal invitation. We're going to have a magnificent event Wednesday evening, and the event will be starting at around 6:30. And we encourage everyone to come. We're going to talk a bit about Tu Bishvat. One thing that we're going to do is we're going to eat. We're going to eat and we're going to say special prayers for every food item, Be'ezat Hashem, that we're going to be eating, connected to a chapter of Tehillim, connected to the actual blessing that that particular food item brings. Some of the things, if you're not going to be here, feel free to take with you this guide, colorful guide that has a lot of insights, the connection between the Tehillim and the food and what to pray for and how medicines are represented via foods and fruits and vegetables, and how a tree is connected to the life of the person. Feel free to take. We got plenty copies, and Be'ezat Hashem, please pass it around. If you're going to be in this part of town Wednesday night or anywhere nearby, Faddal, my suggestion is, since we expect a very large crowd, to maybe do carpool, take Uber, or just walk, because parking lot will be super busy. Now, Mishnah number 11. Today's Mishnah will continue what we began to discuss 2 weeks ago concerning why tragedies come to the world, or why sometimes there are a drought, or there is a lack of rain and forestal fires. So today's Gemara discusses about Deber. Deber comes from the Makot. One of the 10 plagues was called Deber. What's Deber? Pestilence, like a plague. A plague. If you think before reading the Mishnah, Deber comes from the word Dibur. Dibur, how a person speaks. So it says here, Deber bala olam, pestilence comes to the world, al mitot ha'amurot batorah, shelo nimtzeru lebet din, for death penalties prescribed by the Torah that were not delegated to the courts, be'al perot shevi'it, and for the improper use of the produce of the sabbatical year. That's a very powerful statement. The Mishnah puts two extreme consequences, basically capital punishment. In the Torah, there is such a concept as capital punishment. Arba'a mitot bedin, sekila, serefa, herek vehenek. We don't do it, but they are written. And the Gemara writes that the Sanhedrin that will execute one person, one in 70 years, will be called katlanit, like a murderer bedin. So even though the Torah brings consequences, there are two types of capital punishment: bidei shamayim or bidei adam. Bidei shamayim means a godly decision. God forbid, whatever that means. Bidei adam means when a crime was committed, if it's adultery, idolatry, or murder, the Bedin has the power to judge, and if the ruling is to execute, there will be different ways of execution based on the crime committed. But already for 2,000 years and more, we don't have executions. But sometimes people, God forbid, commit any of these sins. So then, how God collects from these people? By sending a plague. COVID. You want a plague? COVID. Today, it's a known word in our vocabulary. But remember back then, 3, 4 years ago, when we were isolated with the masks in our homes, unable to go out, unable to travel, unable to come to the knees, and regretfully, many people passed away during those tragic months for humanity. So it seems from this Mishnah that some of the people perhaps who left the world may have been somehow a tikkun to her soul. I don't know this, but that's what the Mishnah says. It says that Akadosh Baruch Hu sometimes camouflages the action of judgment by a person leaving the world in a certain way. We don't know this, we don't understand it, and who are we to judge? But I'm only translating what the Mishnah says. But if you think that this statement may have been strong, the next one is even stronger. Because the next one says, you know why pestilence comes into the world? Because people don't follow the laws of Shemitah in Eretz Israel. That is a much easier sin to do than killing someone or doing idolatry or committing adultery. We'll see in a minute what's the relationship between the fruits of the 7 years and a plague coming down to the world. And the Mishnah didn't say comes down to Israel, it says comes to the world. But where is the mitzvah of Shemitah? Just to recall, the mitzvah of Shemitah basically means the sabbatical year that in a cycle of every 7 years, the seventh year is a year of rest in Israel. A year of rest means we don't work the field. Like we have the Shabbat every week. In Israel, the Pasuk writes, Beshabbata ha'ares Shabbat la'Hashem. The land will go into sabbatical mode. Like professors take a sabbatical, so to speak, Hamavdil. The land needs to rest. In order for the land to be able to produce for the next cycle of 7 years, you need to give a break to the land. That's message number one. We're going to discuss soon the deeper messages, exactly what it means. War. Now, something closer to us. War. We are at war. Like it or not, we are at war. I'm not talking only about Israel and our cousins, Bnei Ishmael, talking about anti-Semitism worldwide and the Ukraine and Russia and who knows what else is going on out there. So the Mishnah writes, Herev ba'a la'olam, the sword of word comes to the world, al-inui haddin, be'al-ivut haddin, for the delay of justice and for the perversion of justice. Be'al hamorim b'Torah shelo kahalacha, and for those rabbis who issue ruling from the Torah contrary to the halacha. What's the common ground in these three reasons? The rabbis, not the people, the rabbis, including the speaker. True. That's what it means. Let's read again. Delay of justice. Who delivered justice? You delivered justice or I delivered justice? I delivered justice. Second case, perversion of justice. When the justice becomes perverted, and doesn't mean perverted the way it sounds out there in the world of perversion, that is something immoral, but it's basically is the crookedness of the judgment. Not necessarily unfair, because sometimes the judge could be ignorant, but basically It does it in a way to deter the proper ruling of the Bedin. We had a case here a few weeks ago, and today in the morning, between yesterday night and today, I have two cases of young girls not receiving the gets from their husbands. True. You didn't? Wow. And you got it? I hear you. Okay, you shouldn't have paid for it, but that's a different story. Okay, the main thing is that you got it. The main thing is that you got it. Challenging. Very challenging, this topic. Hayara'a ba'a la'ulam. Wild beasts comes to the world. Al shebu'at shav. For unnecessary oaths. Be'al hilul Hashem. And for the desecration of God's names. Galut ba'a la'ulam. Exile comes to the world. Al obdei avodah zarah. Because of those who worship idolatry. Be'gilui arayot. And for inappropriate relations. Be'al shefichut damim. And murder, that's basically what it means. Be'al shemitat ha'ares. And for not observing the laws of Shemitah in Eres Israel. You know what this Mishnah is telling us? That we have the power to write history. We have the power to prevent any malady or any type of setback to the world. And when it means we, it means the Jewish people. And in some cases are the farmers, because if you don't own the land, how do you apply the mitzvah of Shemitah? And other cases could be the rabbis. And other cases could be the bedin. And other cases could be a person that has no control of the anger. That's the Avodah Zarah. Who does idolatry today? Nobody. Unless you go to Vietnam, Thailand, the Far East, Tibet, China, Japan. Other than that, Avodah Zarah, according to our holy rabbis, refers to the lack of self-control. So with all that being said, I know that this was a very heavy duty Mishnah, but nevertheless we are here to learn, and sometimes we need to get a bit of a wake-up call to try to work on ourselves, to have self-improvement, and Be'ezat Hashem, you know, it doesn't take too many people to change. It takes a handful of people to change in a good way, and the blessings comes. The reverse of headaches reverse into blessing. Okay, so let's go very quickly. The Me'am Lo'ez writes and it says, the Me'am Lo'ez talks about the first part of the Mishnah, pestilence. So it says, the fourth one, this is number 4, when it comes to a plague, may God protect us all. That's what he writes. May God protect us all from a plague. Why? Because when a plague comes, he writes here, and is brought down in Rashi. Rashi says the following in one of the incidents that happened in the desert when the Jewish people misbehaved, unfortunately. We did that 10 times in the desert, and there was an argument between Aharon Kohen and the Malach. And the Pasuk there says, Rashi writes that when they see each other, is asking him, where are you going? Aharon Kohen asks him, I'm going, the Malach says, I'm going to execute those that I need to take with me. Aharon says, hold on a minute. Moshe told me to stop you. So the Malach says, Slicha. Anybody saw a machine around? Like a white machine? No? No, not here. Check ahí adentro, please. Thank you so much. We're going to check inside now. So what Aharon Kohen says, Moshe told me to stop you. So what the Malach says to Moshe, hold on a minute. Since when Moshe is more important than God? If God told me go execute, I need to execute. Aharon says to the Malach, and since when Moshe does something that God did not tell him to do? So stop now. And the Pasuk says, Bate'atzar hamagefa, the plague stopped. In other words, what the Me'am Lo'ez explains is that imagine yourself if we utilize, instead of a plague, let's call it a grenade, God forbid, an explosion, a bomb. When the bomb explodes, does the bomb says to one person yes, to one person no? The moment that, God forbid, a decree was allowed, a decree was given that allows this tragedy to strike, it doesn't distinguish between the people. God forbid. And therefore it says the Bedin has a responsibility to make sure to act accordingly in order to protect the community. Because if the Bedin doesn't do it, there will be a payback, so to speak. Be'alperot Shevi'i, and the fruits of the seventh year, what has to do? Zo midah keneged midah. God says, I don't understand. You are not the owner of the land. The land belongs to me, God says. Where do we learn such a concept? Chapter Tehillim 24. La Hashem ha'ares umlo'ah. In English it means, to God belongs the earth and the contents. That means that when a person has a house, or let's say in this case, a piece of land, the person becomes the tenant of God, meaning the land belongs to Hashem, especially in Israel, and the land belongs to God. And Hashem allows the person to be the manager of the land. And therefore it says, "Bim enanu mekayemim mizvah shevi'it." And if a tenant ignores to fulfill the mitzvah of Shemitah, which is only applicable in Eretz Israel, so you know what the person is saying? I don't care about God. God forbid. And therefore, God says, guess what? I'm going to bring a plague. Why? Because a plague is above nature and doctors cannot stop the plagues. And it is true. We lived through a plague in our days. Maybe before the COVID, the last time we heard of a plague was maybe 70, 80, 100 years ago. Cholera, bubonic plague, yellow fever, cholera, all these things that perhaps we thought, I know they are far-fetched, somewhere in Africa, somewhere in whatever. Nowadays, we are super immune. It is telling us the opposite. A plague is a godly wake-up call to Am Israel, but especially when we're dealing with the situation in Eretz Israel or the rabbinate not acting in the proper way. And I know that I'm speaking a lot about the rabbinate, but this is the menu of the day. Today's menu is the responsibility that the rabbinate needs to have, which, by the way, it's a class that I have to give tomorrow to 50 rabbis. And I'm shaking. And I don't shake easily. Doesn't matter. Rabbis that I never met in my life, exception of one. Yeah. I don't know why they picked me, but they said, you can teach us. I said, okay. I hope that God will give me a hand and I will, do the right thing. But I'm shaking. No. It's going to be here, yeah. Please pray. I need all the prayers. Pray that God puts me the right words and I'm able to guide them properly because it's not easy. But based after this Mishnah, I have already what to say tomorrow. Thank you for coming. Because of you, I have more ammunition to say tomorrow. Thank you, of course. But look how important he's saying here. The next one, let's go to the next one. Herev ba'a la'olam. It says, wars. It says, אם הדיינים משהים הדין יותר מדי. If the hachamim, the judges, they delay the ruling on a case. In other words, I'm dealing with this case, this one that happened earlier today. Earlier means 10:45 in the morning, before I came down, like 10:30, 10:45 in the morning. This is going on already for 3, 4 months. I'm not involved in the case, but I was asked for help. And I told the fellow on the phone, listen, this fellow is playing with his own life. True. Because he's causing suffering. And when you cause suffering, God doesn't stay quiet. So it says, if the judges take a long time to give a ruling, or they just become corrupt. Corrupt means the guilty is ruled innocent, or the innocent is ruled guilty. God sends the war. And also for those teachers or rabbis who give halachic ruling inappropriately, which I said this in one of the classes, that a rabbi needs to know to say, I don't know. Because if a rabbi believes that he knows it all, tell him to go back to the kitab. Because it's impossible to know everything, especially when it comes to complicated matters, which you know me long enough. I deal with a lot of complicated matters, complicated people, all kinds, by all, whatever complicated means in the rabbinate, most likely I went through it and I always learn something new. The next Mishnah, it says as follows. A second opinion says that not necessarily means that they give a halachic, they give the wrong halachic ruling. Let's say you ask me a question and I tell you allowed when it's not allowed, for example, or kasher or not kasher. Here he's saying, next opinion says, those who interpret the Torah in the wrong way. And there are people like that today. There are people who they draw their own conclusions when they learn the Torah, and it's not always based on Torah ideals or Torah values. Sometimes they quote non-kosher sources to explain an aspect of the Torah, and it says that diluting the essence of the Torah and even criticizing indirectly the Torah through the misconstrued way of understanding, that also brings disaster to the world as well. Why? Simply because the Torah is our essence of life. And if a person, God forbid, criticizes the Torah, and anybody may ask, how is it possible that a Jew will criticize the Torah? I want you to know that there are people who criticize the Torah because of their own ignorance. They don't know, they understand it the way they want to understand instead of researching the Torah, researching the halacha. And I tell you this because I get this type of questions. A person came up the other day and it says, I have this question, it doesn't make sense. Da, 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 da. He gave me a whole spiel. I said, open the Humash. I read the Pasuk and I explained to him the verb, the grammar that the Pasuk utilized. And 3 minutes later, he says, thank you, I have no more questions. What prompted all these questions and building up? Misinformation or misunderstanding the essence of the Torah. Third, midah keneged midah. What has to do war with the dayanim, the judges? It says fascinating, and it says, listen to this. Herev, it says, Le'olam, Gemara in Sanhedrin, לעולם יראה הדיין כאילו חרב מונחת לו בין ירכותיו. It says, when a judge sits down, have in mind that there is a sword right lined up between your legs. If you give the right verdict, the sword stays up. If you give the wrong one, the sword comes down. It's a figurative way. Relax. There was only one person who had a sword on top of their bed. This was Michal bat Shaul and Palti ben Laish. In the book of Shmuel, when Shaul HaMelech made a promise, whoever defeats Goliath will marry my daughter. David defeated Goliath, came to ask for Michal. He says, no, I didn't mean her, I meant the younger sister. So what did he do? In order to block David, he took his daughter and married her to Palti. It was a holy man. Now, Palti knew that this marriage wasn't valid. But if he goes against the king can execute him. So what did he do? He married fictitiously his wife, but they made an agreement that they will not touch each other. And they were in their home, and they put a sword on top of the bed. True. Look in the book of Shmuel. Anybody that moves towards the center, the sword will fall. And that's why he was called Palti. He was able to escape the temptation. He married her fictitiously just to save his life. Because if he will reject the marriage by challenging the king Shaul, how can you? It's like somebody says, marry the daughter. Shaul says, whoever defeats the Goliath will marry my daughter. That's what Shaul says. Now Shaul had many daughters. So David came to pick up Michal, or the other one. Shaul said, no, I didn't say that daughter, I said a daughter. So once I say a daughter, I can pick anyone I want. And that was the story of Palti ben Laish. He was called Palti because he was able to escape the temptation of immorality. So therefore it says, Mishiach Adin. It says the following. It says in the topic of the rabbinate, there are two types of rabbi. The rabbi that is qualified but decides, you know what, don't bother me. I'm gonna stay around with my books, with my learning, and that's the end of it. Or the opposite, the one who is not qualified but wants to be on top. It says both of them are wrong. The one that is hiding supposed to be leading, and the one that is leading should go back to the Talmud Torah. That's basically what the Pirush in the Pirkei Avot writes, the way the Pasuk says, Lo tirsah. Very interesting, the word. The Pasuk writes in the Ten Commandments, this coming Perashat Yitro, contains the Ten Commandments. One of the Ten Commandments is what? Lo tirsah. What's the meaning of lo tirsah? Do not kill. That's basically what it means. And here he explains that the pasuk, the tzaddik, is under the patah. The single line a, it's under the tzaddik. And in Pirashat Beit Hanan is with the kamatz. Now, for Sephardic people, it will not make a difference because kamatz and patah are both. Let me draw it so you can see it. You have a napkin nearby? Oh, let me a piece of paper. Thank you. So I got it. Thank you. This is great. This is called kamatz, and this is called patah. The vowel kamatz, the vowel patah. In Perashat Yitro, it says with patah. In Perashat Beit Hanan is with kamatz. According to the Sephardic way of praying, there is really not much different. difference. In the Ashkenazic, you will say lo tirtzach with the patach, lo tirsoch with the kamatz, because in the Ashkenazic tradition, the kamatz it's Baruch ato, a multi-system, by the way. Relax. Right? You can follow me. Baruch ato. Borchu. Why is Borchu? Because it has a kamatz. So according to the Ashkenazic tradition, the kamatz it's like an O. According to the Sephardic tradition, kamatz and patah are basically A. Baruch ata. Barechu. Lo tirtzah. So it says the Me'am Lo'ez, and it says as follows: Impoteach piv, because the word patah means to open. Patah, ah, ah, instead of kamatz, ah. You understand the difference? Patah, ah, patah, open. Kamatz, ah. So it says, if you open your mouth when you're supposed to keep it closed, you may lead to kill someone. And the killing, God forbid, is not physical. The killing means by giving the person the wrong ruling. And the person believes is allowed, and actually was not allowed. In a more musar perspective, we all understand. The person needs to know when to speak, when to listen, and when to stay quiet. The problem is that we mix them all. We speak when we're supposed to listen, and we listen when we're supposed to speak, and we speak when we're supposed not to speak. That's what the Me'am is right. Further, I know it's confusing. Just be normal. That's all. Do the right thing. Do the ways of Hashem. The Gemara. If I'm going to make your life easier, I'm telling you what the Gemara says. The Gemara asks a very interesting question. Can you summarize what should be my duty in this world? My responsibility. What do I need to invest to make my life a meaningful life? You know what the answer of the Gemara says? Ya'aseh atzmo ke'ilem. Make yourself deaf and mute. You agree? Hazako Baruch. The Gemara said it 2,000 years ago. Deaf and mute. Deaf to ignore the nonsense, and mute not to answer back to nonsense. In other words, you want to live a better life, ignore and move on. It's not easy. It's not easy at all, because some people speak before they speak, they think. I used to have a teacher who used to tell us from childhood, think before you speak. I'm not sure if I did that, but as you grow through life and you realize retroactively, I shouldn't have said this, maybe I should have said it in a different way, etc. One more statement, and it says as follows: Hayara'a ba'ala, a wild animal comes to the world. It says individuals who swear for no reason. How many times in the world of business, in the United States or in South America, it doesn't matter, they tell you, te juro por Dios, que esto es mi costo. I swear to God, this is what I paid for. That is asur. I only said it just for you to see how easy people make this type of comments. And according to this, it says, what are you thinking? That saying God's name, and especially you swearing with God's name, is chopped liver? That you can say it because people say it? Says you making a vow, you making a promise, it doesn't go empty. It's not empty, haki balash. The opposite is the opposite. Goes further and it says, that why this type of sin activates the wild animals to attack society. He explains as follows: One of the differences between humans and animals is that a human is able to speak. Some people speak like animals. God forbid. You know what that means, right? When a person speaks without filtering, without respect, without kavod, without safe, so to speak, a person speak heke because he's free. But it says if a person doesn't speak properly, and in this case means that if a person doesn't know how to put control, not to make promises and vows, uttering God's names. So the animal says, what's the difference between you and I? You are an animal, not you, God forbid. You are an animal, I'm an animal. At the end of the day, what's the three differences between humans and animals? We eat, they eat. We sleep, they sleep. They relieve themselves, we relieve themselves. Whatever they do, we do. But there are three differences that we have. Number one, koach hadibur. That's the power of speech. That a human is able to talk. A human has a sechel, has a brain. Let's say I was born in Argentina. You were born in America. I learned English. We are able to talk. Or let's say you were born in Israel and you speak English with me. So we both came from different backgrounds and now we are able to communicate. Animals, you don't see a giraffe schmoozing with an elephant or a lion talking with a sheep. There's no such a thing. So we have a koach hadibur, the power of speech. We have the sechel, the brain, to understand and to reason. And the third one, behira hofshit, the freedom of choice. We have the power to make the difference. We have the power to make a decision. Not only that, besides all of the above, there is the fourth element, nefesh elokit, the godly part of our neshama. Everybody has a nefesh behemit. Every creation has an animalistic part of the soul. And even though it sounds bad, so to speak, but it's not bad. It's the reality of life. Who needs to eat? The body or the soul? The body. The neshama doesn't care about food. The neshama give them Torah, classes, tehillim, prayers, mitzvot, ma'asim tovim. The neshama will be super happy. Who needs to sleep? Who needs to eat? Who needs to drink? Who needs to do all the physical things that we do? The body. For that reason, there is a constant struggle between the body of the person and the neshama of the person. What the neshama wants, the body doesn't provide. What the body wants, the neshama doesn't need. So they are struggling every day until Shabbat comes. When Shabbat comes, one of the reasons why we say Shabbat Shalom is because even between, I should say, the body and the soul, they make peace. Because when you eat on Shabbat, carries Kedusha. Our person dresses on Shabbat is enhancing the Shabbat, like we learned today. How the person sets up the home for Shabbat, the Malachim coming to the person's home, the Shabbat Kiddush, the Shabbat Sa'udot, whatever goes into a normal observant Shabbat home. So all these components, how physical they are, the Neshama is happy and the body is happy. But if that doesn't exist, meaning to say, if the way the person talks, the way the person promises, the way the person commits themselves and don't fulfill their commitment, so then the animal asks, what's the difference between you and I? We are the same. That's what happened in the time of the Mabul. What happened in the time of the Mabul? That's exactly what happens. The animals and humans felt they were the same. And they swear that's the reason why there were a couple of challenges on that department in the department of morality. And that's what happened later on in the Tower of Babel. In the Tower of Babel, I recall reading this many years back, there were a couple of new animals that they were changed that became animals from humans. Society says animals became humans, right? Right? Animal became humans. According to our books, some of the animals were humans in the beginning. They became animals. For example, the monkey. Wait, the monkey, the elephant, and the bear. Bear, also, bear, Bear. Now, elephant, I'll explain each and every one of them very quickly. And maybe there were more, but I'll tell you what's written about it. The bear has, why in Hebrew, how do you call that animal? Dove. Why it's called dove? From dober, able to speak. Now, you ever saw a bear sometimes walks on the four legs and sometimes stands and he's not afraid on humans and goes to the garbage cans of the humans? Why all that happens? Because humans don't frighten that animal. Because he sees the human in their part that they became animals after the Tower of Babel. The pil, the elephant. Why it's called pil? Pil is from Lashon Nofel, fallen. He was downgraded from a human into an animal. And the third one, the monkey. How many similarities a monkey has with a human? Too many. I saw this many years back in a commentary in a Safra that I think they have inside on Perashat Noah. What were the changes that came to the world besides languages? Till that day of the Tower of Babel, the universal language was the Lashon from the Torah, Lashon HaKodesh. That was the universal language for society until it came the Tower of Babel, and then the languages started to become, that was a punishment, by the way, that the languages started to become part of the human race until Mashiach comes. Mashiach comes, the button will be reset, and all the nations of the world will speak Lashon HaKodesh only. Is actually a pasuk that says, אז אהפוך אל כל העמים בשפה ברורה ובנעימה לקרוא כולם בשם השם. Then, upon Mashiach's arrival, will reverse the tongue of all the nations of the world to speak and to connect to the Almighty in a clean, holy, and pleasant verbal manner. Dayenu. For today, we say, Dayenu, this is to be continued. We're not done. There is another one that discusses exile. Why exile? Why Galut? We are in Galut almost 2,000 years. 1957, 58 years. We are already in exile. Be'ezat Hashem, with Hashem's help, maybe Mashiach comes between today and Monday, so he can do the speech. Otherwise, we'll continue with Hashem's help next Monday. And please feel free to take with you the guide of Tu Bishvat and try to make it on Monday evening, actually Wednesday at around 6:30. Yes, Wednesday evening at around 6:30. Shavua Tov Mevorach. Tizku Leshanim Rabot to everybody.